This is the Khmer Times News. My name is Paolo Bonini, and these are your headlines. Dengue fever cases surged dramatically, causing great concern amongst the medical community. Abandoned buildings in Sihanoukville are now a big problem, as there are literally hundreds of them. And in our crime desk, a man who took on way too much and, unsurprisingly, was caught in the act. But firstly, our headline story. There has been a very alarming rise in dengue fever cases in the first 6 months of the year, with 4,600 cases being recorded. This figure is an increase of 1,800 cases compared to the first 6 months of last year, and this huge rise has been a shock to the healthcare system. But it is not only Cambodia that is seeing a rise of this disease. It is spreading its misery across the entire globe. Before 1970, only 9 countries in the entire world had experienced dengue epidemics, but now it is 100 countries, over 90 new countries in just a few decades, as it continues its relentless march across the globe, leaving death in its wake.
Estimates indicate that 390 million dengue virus infections occur every single year globally, and the risk of infection now exists in 129 countries. But a whopping 70% of actual infections occur here within Asia. The number of dengue fever cases reported to the WHO increased 8-fold over just 2 decades. So, in the year 2000, 500,000 cases were reported. But by 2019, that number had leapt to 5.2 million. Those numbers are as frightening as they are staggering. A disease that had only 500,000 cases has now multiplied up to over 5 million in just 9 years, and the surge of dengue does nothing but to continue to spread. Reported deaths between the year 2000 and 2015 have also rocketed, from 960 to over 4,000. And tragically, the most commonly affected are children. As I said, back in the 1970s, only 9 countries had experienced severe dengue epidemics. The disease is now a continental curse in more than 100 countries, spreading to Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Western Pacific, and even the Mediterranean, as well as the Americas. The threat of a possible outbreak of dengue also exists within Europe. A local transmission was reported for the first time in France in 2010. It seems that this spectre of death is no longer a concern only of Asia. Its relentless march has seen it arrive at the doorstep of the First World, and its shadow of death only ever seems to lengthen.
Sihanoukville has a problem, and no matter where you stand in the city, it is looming there above you. And it is a problem of such enormity you can even see it from space. It is the ghost buildings that haunt the city's skyline. It has now been reported that over 400 skyscrapers stand abandoned. These are buildings that are unfinished shells, derelict and unwanted. And if that is not bad enough, many were built without a construction license. As to how one can build a high-rise building and do so without gaining a license, has many citizens in the seaside town rather confused. Now, it seems the only way out of this apocalyptic skyline of decaying abandoned buildings is to demolish them. And that, some say, will cost an awful lot more than their initial construction.
An interministerial meeting was held to try and resolve why are there so many abandoned buildings in Sihanoukville City. And what is being discovered is the buildings seem to be caught in legal issues between project owners and developers. But what will bowl you over is the percentage of abandoned buildings. It is simply staggering. For earlier in April, the local governor of the province told the media that 600 buildings in Sihanoukville have been completed, but 400 have been abandoned and stand derelict, which gives an incredible percentage of 40% of all large developments in the town being ghost buildings, or as I would prefer to call them, corpse buildings, for they are dead in every single way, as the investors are abroad and there is little way to influence them to bring these buildings back to life. The governor of the province has tried to solve the crisis created by the unfinished buildings, left mostly by Chinese investors, following scathing criticism to his office that they were an eyesore to the coastal city that is trying to become a tourist location. But it only gets worse, and may cause you to have a very sharp intake of breath. For what the governor has confirmed is that many of these buildings had no construction license. And he went on to indicate that these buildings would have to be demolished as they are simply unsafe. And one expert believes that all of them may well need to be demolished. For who is to say which buildings were constructed properly? Who knows if the correct steel was placed into the concrete to reinforce it, or if the foundations were in fact laid properly? Now, this is not a $1 million problem. It's not even a $10 million problem. It is beyond all that. For these ghost buildings will haunt Sihanoukville for many decades to come.
Two stories in our crime desk. The first one, a man who tries to make himself some kind of tortoise, and a runner gets his just desserts. The award for the most obvious thief goes to this man. Look upon him, dear viewer, and admire him for his passion in thievery. For when I tell you what it is he tried to flee with, you will be impressed. You see, this thief was as bold as they come as he robbed an abandoned villa on a dark black inky night in Phnom Penh. His downfall, though, began when he raised the suspicions of neighbours, when they saw him leaving an empty property with his booty, and they immediately phoned the police. So what is it he tried to sneak off with in the dead of night? Maybe it was gold, maybe there were jewels, or maybe it was cash. Well, nope, nope, and nope. This guy tried to cart off one of these. That's right, he tried to carry a washing machine on his back in the dead of night and think nobody would consider that abnormal. He must have looked like some bizarre tortoise, with an exceptionally large white shell glistening in the moonlight. Needless to say, he was captured and arrested, for unfortunately, he did not make a clean getaway. I'm sorry. I would like to apologise for that joke. Now something that is no joking matter. So often there is a constant stream of stories about drivers hitting a pedestrian or a motorcyclist and killing them. And then they do the traditional, which is to look upon their victim laying in the road injured or dying, and then they flee the scene. Well, yet again, another man has died in an attempted hit and run in the capital. And the important word there is attempted. As a speeding driver killed a man with his car, and he did the traditional by fleeing the scene. But this time, he was captured after being chased by outraged citizens. According to witnesses, the moto driver was hit at high speeds by a driver who was driving in an erratic manner. Potentially he was drunk. And the bike was dragged under the car for several meters, instantly killing the man in what can only be described as a truly horrific death. The driver of the car then attempted to flee, but was restrained after a kilometre chase by a mob of angry citizens. And to that mob that pursued him for so long, I say, well done. The law should be plain. The law should be clear. If you are in an accident, no matter how small, and you run, then you are running to jail. No ifs, no buts, no excuses. You leave the crime. You will do the time. Hopefully we have not done too badly with this week's show, as we were swamped with election stories. And I can even close this episode with an incredibly positive story for you. And that is the rising life expectancy rates within the kingdom. The population itself has increased from 11.5 million to nearly 17 million. Between 1998 and 2022. That's 24 years and an increase of 5.5 million people. Wow! But it is the life expectancy that has simply rocketed, and you would not believe the latest figures. You see, back in 1998, men were dying off at an average age of 54. But now you would never guess what that number is. Have a guess. From an average life expectancy of just 54, hazard a guess as to what it is now. I will reveal all in the next segment. But do trust me, it is incredible.
There is some numbers to be crunched here, but do pay attention, as it is the numbers that tell an amazing tale of recovery. Let's start with infant deaths at birth. In 2008, 810 babies died for every 100,000 born. But last year, that number plummeted from 810 to just 154. And that is a huge drop that, judging by year-on-year trends, will only continue to decrease as the healthcare system improves. But I think the most impressive numbers lay in the life expectancy of Cambodians. So really pay attention to these numbers. In 1998, the life expectancy was 54 years for men and 58 years for women. But by 2019, just a few years on, men went from 54 years to 74 years. And women from 58 to 76. So men born in recent years will live a full 20 years longer than those of 1998. Now just think about that. If you were told your life would be extended by a full 2 decades, what a staggering achievement that would be. 20 more years of life is quite simply incredible. However, Cambodia still faces some challenges, such as those maternal death rates, for they are still high compared to other countries in the region. And of course there is an expanding population and they must be cared for. And the only way to do that is expanding the healthcare system itself. And the government is very clear that they will not encourage young mothers who cannot afford to look after more children. But it is not just the kids, for at the other end of the equation is, of course, the elderly, and they are living longer than ever, and they also need to be cared for. And all of them are only ever increasing in number. It's time to have a look ahead and see what the weather has in store for us next week. Well, there's nothing new to report here, that's for sure. Bit of a break over the weekend. There potentially is some rain, but it looks like it's dying down a bit after a very heavy week of rain. But as we go into the following week, look what it is. It's more of the same. It's wind and rain and hurricane. Humidity looks like it's on the rise, but the average temperature, low 30s, high 20s. This has been the Khmer Times News. Please do subscribe and comment and stay up to date with all the breaking news by following us on both Facebook and Telegram. This has been Paolo Bonini, and that was the week that was. I'll see you next weekend for your weekly Roundup.